Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to begin by extending my deepest condolences to the families whose children were killed by the Iranian regime forces during the recent uprising in Iran. Thank you all for being here today at a moment of profound consequence for Iran and for the region. Since December 28, 2025, Iran has witnessed one of the most extensive and violent nationwide uprisings in its modern history. What began as protest over economic collapse, runaway inflation, currency freefall, unemployment, and shortage of water and electricity rapidly transformed into a nationwide political movement demanding an end to dictatorship in Iran. Within days, demonstrations spread to hundreds of cities. Merchants, students, teachers, women, youth took to the streets. Tehran Grand Bazaar, long considered very cautious and risk-averse, joined the uprising, signaling a deep and irreversible crisis at the core of the ruling system in Iran. The regime responded with unprecedented repression. Control was transferred from police forces to the IRGC forces. Internet and mobile communications were shut down nationwide. Major cities were placed under de facto martial law. Live ammunition, pellet fire, snipers, armored vehicles, and heavy weapons were used against unarmed civilians. Reliable reports indicate 1,000 kills, tens of thousands injured, and more than 50,000 were arrested. Yet, despite this brutality, the uprising did not end. It adapted. Protests continued in new forms, localized demonstrations, clashes with security forces, and powerful acts of defiance at funerals of those killed. A defining feature of this uprising has been the emergence of organized and determined youth, willing to confront repression and regime forces despite the risk of their own death. This moment raises a critical question that Iran is changing, but what comes next? Maryam Rajavi, president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, has addressed this very question. She made clear that the issue facing Iran is no longer whether the current system will fall, but rather when it falls, what will replace it, and how to prevent chaos or a power vacuum. She emphasizes that recent months have underscored a fundamental truth. While the Iranian regime is severely weakened and reeling from heavy blows, it will not collapse under the weight of its own failure alone, nor will this dictatorship be toppled by foreign pressure or decisions made in distant capitals. Change in Iran can only be achieved by the Iranian people themselves through an organized nationwide resistance, a force capable of confronting one of the most brutal repressive machines of our time, the IRGC. These nationwide resistance units exist in the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, MEK. These resistance units are from these MEK and People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran. This is not mere symbolic opposition. It is a movement forged through 60 years of struggle against two successive dictatorships, the Shah and the Mullah. Its history is written in sacrifice, with over 100,000 members executed or tortured to death, including 30,000 political prisoners massacred in 1988 for the refusal to renounce the resistance to the mullahs. This immense prize is the ultimate proof of the movement legitimacy and its deep root in the Iranian society. Crucially, this resistance has prepared for the day after. The Coalition National Council of Resistance of Iran has articulated a clear and time-bound democratic roadmap. The formation of a provisional government, followed by free and fair elections for a constituent assembly within only 6 months, the drafting of a new constitution, and a national referendum to transfer sovereignty to the Iranian people. The vision for Iran's future is equally clear. Full gender equality, separation of religion and state, abolition of death penalty, judicial independence, freedom of parties and media, recognition of the rights of Iran's nationalism, and non-nuclear, peaceful, democratic republic. Today's conference is not about abstract theories. It's about a real uprising, a real cost paid in human lives, and a real democratic republic alternative. Iran has entered a structural turning point. The old status quo is gone. And the choices made now by Iranians and by the international community will shape the outcome. I would like to continue by asking my colleague, Mr. Jafarzadeh, to join here and give us detailed information that obtained by the Iranian resistance. But before that, this information from inside Iran, I would like to show you a clip about the uprising in Iran. Thank you.
خیال صدقی مشهور محمودا چی بگیرن هم فیلم میگیرم از So. عاقبت شهرداری کثافت. وای مرگ بر سیدلی.
ساختمون اداره مالیات سوزوندن، ماشینا همچنان هم این آتش سوزی ادامه داره.
Good day, everybody. Thank you again for coming to our press conference today. My name is IRGC Jafarzadeh. I'm the Deputy Director of the Washington office of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. We just saw a brief video clip of the scenes of the uprising. We are constantly getting more video clips. Actually, today we got some more that were not included here as the internet shutdown had slowed down getting the video clips. More and more information are coming up. Now, what I'd like to do today is to emphasize that this event is being live streamed both on our YouTube account as well as our X account at NCRI-US on both of them. And for the media, I know a lot of you are watching online. If you have any questions, please email your questions to media@ncrius.org. Email your questions to media@ncrius.org. And during the Q&A session, we will get to those questions. Now, talking about the uprising in Iran, to 2026 uprising, it actually is something that never happened during this regime. And for decades, over 400 cities were engulfed in the protest in all 31 provinces of the country. And we had a situation that the Supreme Leader Khamenei just 2 days ago had to come and concede and describe it as a coup that basically threatened the very existence of the Iran regime. And both the massacre on the part of the regime and the bravery on the part of the people and those involved in the protests have been unprecedented, absolutely unprecedented. The NCRI has compiled so far the names of 2,257 people who have become martyrs during this event. We've compiled the names that those we have been able to publish them, and more names are coming every 1 or 2 days. We have an updated list that we have to go through the process and make sure that they're accurate. And among those that have been killed and we have been able to identify, 152 of them were children under the age of 18, 245 women among them, and over 50,000 have been arrested. This is just to give you a glimpse of those fallen for freedom that we have obtained, their names and their bravery, their sacrifice. As you saw, the level of courage that they showed during the uprising, during the protest, never feared the IRGC, continued to push back against them, caught the mullahs by surprise. Now, these are the cities that we have so far identified that The protesters were killed in these cities. As you can see on the map, it engulfs the whole country. It's not just one area, it's not just a capital, it's not just a province, rather it's all over the country, a clear indication that unlike whatever the mullahs claim, this is a genuine desire, genuine rise of a nation to bring about change in the country. This is just the breaking down, at least those marches we have been able to identify. You can see, of course, the bulk was been in Tehran, which is, the most populated, obviously, city, and a lot of activities were taking place. But the other major provinces from Khorasan, Razavi, Mashhad, Esfahan, Kermanshah, and others. But also look at how all over the country the people stood up and confronted the regime and dared to continue the protests until the Revolutionary Guards started firing on them. Now, what is evident, and I want to go into the details of it today, is that this protest, this uprising took shape despite enormous efforts by the Iran regime meant to prevent it. There have been extensive efforts, at least since fall of 2024, with the Sarallah garrison headquarters, which is the main headquarters of Revolutionary Guards in charge of the protests in Tehran. They are the ones who take over control of everything when the protests happen, but they're also in charge of determining how they can prevent it. And that's why everything they did, it actually failed, and then the regime had to massacre practically a large number of people, thousands of people, and then face the consequences of that. Now, let me talk about some of the documents that we have obtained by the network of the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, the main Iranian opposition movement that has presence all over the country in all 31 provinces, and has been very, very effective in the past in obtaining information from within the Iranian regime, within the Revolutionary Guards. This is called the Comprehensive Security Plan of Tehran. And you can see here, it says Qarargah Sarallah Tehran, means Sarallah garrison in Tehran, and the date is the fall of 2024. Now, the content of this document, it's very extensive. It has 129 pages. I have the whole document, and there's no way I can go into the details of it. It has 10 different chapters dealing with all kinds of issues. But it basically demonstrates how the Sarallah garrison had examined every aspect of the country in many details to prevent an uprising, and they failed. This is not that they didn't expect it. This is not that it just something happened, spontaneously. Rather, they were planning to prevent it. Now, among the detailed plan, they have it here. They basically, and I will provide a package for the media before you leave. A lot of these details are actually there. I have some pages of that plan translated with the original picture of those pages that shows, they are aware of the potential problems in the country that they are facing, but also they have defined their goal, which is to enhance the intelligence oversight and situation awareness within the territorial jurisdiction of Sarallah garrison in Tehran. This is the plan for Tehran, which is the main place where a lot of these chaotic situations arise. And then they have the different levels of what they call high-risk disruptive groups. And level number 1 this is how it's described. Individuals convicted by the revolutionary courts of organized crimes and security-related offenses. Security-related offenses, meaning, resistance against the Iran regime, or for actions linked to factional organized groups and counter-revolutionary activity. Counter-revolutionary activity is actually the pseudonym describing the main Iranian opposition, the Mujahid Rakhal, the MEK. And then it says included in that group are supporters, sympathizers, repentant collaborators, etc. of armed anti-regime counter-revolutionary groups and Salafi movement, and then also included immediate family members and close relatives of counter-revolutionary group elements, as well as families of executed members of such groups. Clearly referring that the number one threat that the regime is facing is this movement, the network it has, the people around it, the family members, anyone who is anyhow related to that, and that's what they were focusing on, yet they failed. So that's the most important takeaway from this protest. Second, now, another issue I want to talk about is that the security apparatus of the Iran regime is that since many years ago, they have made it province by province. They call it Security Council of each province. And in those Security Council meetings, the Revolutionary Guard's commanders are there, the governor is there, anyone who is in any way related to the suppression apparatus and intelligence gathering, including the Minister of Intelligence, are all present in that. Now, and it covers all, in every province, all 31 provinces, they do have what they call Shoraya Tamine Ostan, means security, province security council. And we have obtained by the network of the MEK inside Iran an audio tape of a meeting that was held on 28th April 2025, which they discuss, and all of the top officials who are in charge of Tehran are in that meeting, including the Minister of Intelligence, Ismail Khatib. And they basically, in this audio tape, and I'll play a part of it, it's a very extensive meeting, but I'll just play a few minutes of it. They talk about the concerns that they have, and they claim they have monitored everything, they have everything under control, and every potential security risks are already addressed. So they're confident that another uprising will not happen. This is April of 2025. This is the meeting, and we're showing parts of the meeting that Minister of Intelligence Khatib, as I said, was present. These are the people who are in that meeting, and we're going to go one by one. This is the governor, and you can see the deputy governor, all of the top officials in Tehran province.
دومین جلسه شورای تامین استان در سال 1404 8/2/1404.
ابتدای جلسه آیه استاندار انشاءالله در حضور داشته باشند سلام با ذکر صلوات بر محمد و آل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم و به نستعین. عرض سلام و صبح بخیر در نظر عزیزان.
This is the governor of Tehran speaking, who is in charge of that meeting.
حضرت وزیر الاسلام و مسلمین مجموعه خطیب وزیر محترم اطلاعات و معاونین و هیئت همراه. از این افتخار دارد امروز در محضر شما در شورای تامین استان صمیمانه تقدیر و تشکر کنم. اگر اجازه فرمایید در ابتدا دوستان از این شورای تامین محضر جلسه چند نکته برای توسعه‌تون برای شروع برنامه شد. معاون استاندار فرماندار ویژه تهران آقای سلیمانپور، معاون استاندار فرماندار شهرداری آقای توکلی، فرماندار شمیرانات آقای علمی، قانون مقام امور استان‌های سازمان سازمان و مدیر شبکه تهران آقای سردار بیگی، معاون اطلاعات قرارگاه اصفهان الله، همکاران وزارتی، بعد معاون دادستان تهران آقای افتخاری، رئیس سازمان قضایی نیروهای مسلح، آقای شاکرمی که معرف حضور هستن، قانون مقام دادگستری، سردار ولیزاده فرمانده محترم سپاه شهرستان‌های استان، آقای سادات مدیر کل امنیتی، آقای امیر هیده حریری جانشین اطلاعات ارتش جمهوری اسلامی، سردار القاسمی فرمانده انتظامی شرق تهران، سردار عزیزی فرمانده انتظامی غرب تهران، سردار محمدیان که فرمانده تهران بزرگ، نایبی معاون امنیت انتظامی استانداری است. بنده معتمدیان در ارشاد که خب اول جا داره در منظر جناب عالی تشکر کنم از زحمات و تلاش‌های مجموعه شورای تامین استان که بندالله خب از مدیران و فرماندهان لایق و انقلابی و پابکار هستند که بندالله ما سال گذشته علیرغم اینکه بالاخره برآورد همه دستگاه امنیتی کشوری بود که احتمال وجود بحران در ماهای پایانی سال بود، بندالله با هم اشراف اطلاعاتی که ما در سطح استان تهران داشتیم، هم همکاری‌های خوب و اقدامات بازدارنده و پیشگیرانه‌ای که انجام می‌گرفت، بندالله 4-5 بحرانی که در واقع ظرفیت بحران شده بود بندالله مدیریت شد. صدر
تشکر قدر داریم. آقای دکتر معتمدی در خدمتتون هستم. جنبندی
استفاده بودم از فرمایشات ارجمند وزیر محترم اطلاعات، همینطور گزارش خوبی که از محترم شورای تامین مطرح کردن. امروز ما تعامل هم افزایی و همکاری که بالاخره در استان اشاره شد بین اعضای شورای تامین است، خوشبختانه در کل کشور هست. شاید در دوره‌ای که از تعالی به عنوان وزیر اطلاعات و رئیس شورای هماهنگی اطلاعات بودید، خب این تعامل و همکاری در بالاترین سطح خودش از ابتدای انقلاب بوده که جا داره که صدمانه از جناب عالی و رویکرد تعاملی که داشتید صدمانه تقدیر و تشکر رو کنیم. جهت مطلب جناب عالی هم عرض کنم که ما برای تهدیدات سال 1404 هم در حوزه‌های مختلف، هم وزارت اطلاعات، هم مجموعه سپاه قرارگاه سال الله، مجموعه نیروی انتظامی، دستگاه قضایی، سناریوهای مختلفی پیش بینی کردن. اخیراً همین هفته بوده شروع نکنم قرارگاه سالانه جلسه بسیار خوبی با حضور همه متولان امنیت برگزار کرد، با حضور سردار باقری، سردار سلامی، سردار بردان و مرور شد بر هم وقایع سال گذشته و هم برنامه‌هایی که برای سال 1400 هست. با آمادگی کامل انشالله پای کار هستیم و حضور از وزارت امنیت دیگری هست. خیلی متشکرم از فرصتی که گذاشتید برای همه مشغله‌ای که داشتید. برای زمان رو پای میدیم جلسه رو ختم کنیم با ذکر صلوات بر محمد و آل محمد.
Now, I don't know if you had a chance to read the transcript. It was there. I will provide the actual transcript of the parts that we played. That all of the top officials of Tehran were there. They referred to an earlier meeting where Salami, who was the head of the IRGC, and all of the top officials were present there. So this wasn't a lightweight meeting. It's a top secret meeting. The most secure issues were discussed, and all of them were emphasizing that we have examined every potential crisis that could emerge and could turn any social issue or economic issue that could turn into a crisis. We have handled them all, and we're in charge. Everything is fine, and yet, after all of those measures they did, this uprising took place. So this is so important to realize that this was a major defeat for the Iran regime to prevent the uprising, as evident in this tape and all the other documents that we have presented earlier. In that meeting also, Khatib spoke. I didn't include that. That would be too long. And he also mentioned in his video, his audio, that the main concern of the Supreme Leader Khamenei has been the potential problems in the society that could emerge any minute, any day. And they need to be a lot more aware and a lot more vigilant and try to address all of those concerns because otherwise they could lead to major upheavals. Nevertheless, he says at the end, you know, we're in good shape. Now, we also have in this regard in case they were planning, in case a security situation happens, what they call security situation, meaning protests, major upheavals, what are they going to do? We have here a top secret document that we obtained from inside the Iran regime. It's published, issued by the Ministry of Interior, the National Security Council. Just to be clear, we have a Supreme National Security Council, which is the highest decision-making body of the Iran regime, headed by the president, under the control of Khamenei. And then we have the National Security Council. It doesn't have the word supreme, that is only focused on security matters related to the Tehran and other provinces. So that, and it's under the Interior Ministry. So this directive, and I have a copy of it here, there's a copy of it in this book, in the package as well, that it was issued in March. It was March 3, 2021. And in this, it basically refers that they have discussed all the details with the relevant authorities, all the people in the government, and they have come up with a directive on top of a modus operandi, a plan on what to do in each case, in each situation. They have defined the security situation in 4 different levels and have specified what they do in each security situation, who is in charge, who is supporting, what measures they should take, and all of that. So it was all well thought out and well planned way in advance on what to do. Here's the internal document. Again, it says on top, it says Kheli Mahramane right here, means top secret. And there are 4 different security situations. The first one is what they call Vaziyat Intizami, meaning the law enforcement situation. This is a situation that basically public security has been disrupted due to incidents or security threats as they defined it. And then the people who are in charge are basically what they call in level A and B is NAJA, that's the state security forces. And when it gets chaotic, gets to level C, it would be IRGC. And it defines who are the supporting agencies. That's the IRGC and VAJA. VAJA is Vezarat Etelat Jomhuri Islami, meaning the Ministry of Intelligence, also known as the MIS. So that's like the first level of security situation. The second level is that what they call Vaziyat Amniyati Ghayr Musallahane, meaning the security situation non-armed, meaning that no, on the part of the protesters, arms is not used. Again, in that situation, they say the entity that is in charge would be the IRGC, and then the supporting elements, they also define that. And then the third level is that armed, when the situation is very confrontational, the people are pushing back, confronting the Revolutionary Guards. In that situation, again, they describe the authorities entirely on the IRGC, and all the other agencies are supportive. So when it comes to a situation like that, it's all IRGC controlling everything, and if it's Tehran, Saral, the garrison takes over. So now here's what they describe as armed security situation. That in that situation, I have the Farsi document, but I'll put you the translation of that, it basically says that under those circumstances, the Ministry of Communications and Information is obligated to impose internet restrictions, cutting or slowing connectivity in the areas experiencing unrest. So this is not just somebody just decides one day we're going to cut off the internet. This is part of a plan in place from day one. It's well defined. In these circumstances, they will cut off the internet to disrupt communication and also prevent information getting out. So now let's get back to what happened in January, the massacre that took place. There were different layers during different periods. Level one was actually when the protests were formed between December 28th for 3 days until December 30th. This was basically, that's when the protests started in Bazaar, and other cities also joined. It was about the issue of the currency, the value, deteriorating value of currency. And it was in that first layer, and that's how they dealt with it. It was basically state security forces that were involved, hoping that it will not go to the next level. Now, in the coming days, it actually escalated between December 31st to January 7th, expanded to more cities and more provinces, and then they escalated that to and they turned it over to the IRGC. They described it as security non-armed condition. So that was like level 2. And then from January 8 to 11, they escalated that to level 3. And that's when actually the communications were cut off. It was at 9 p.m. on January 8th that they cut off the communications. It was followed by live fire ammunition and against the protesters, and as I said, they called it security arms situation. So they were hoping that the protest will not escalate. It did, and then they treated it based on their own plan to go, and orders were already in place. Already all of that, as I showed you, was approved by the Supreme Leader Khamenei against the people. Now, what we really saw was a crime against humanity by the IRGC in the past, 2-3 weeks. They even attacked hospitals and finished off the wounded. They killed protesters by agents who were embedded within the crowd, and they would pose as protesters and identify who are the leaders, who are the targets they want to kill, and then they will take the gun and shoot the person from behind in the head on the spot right away. So they had people identifying the protesters on the spot and kill them right there. They blinded so many people by firing into the crowd with gunfire, and then the people who died were so large in numbers, they had to have large trucks, refrigerated trucks, to move the bodies and pile them. And they even charged the families of those slain for bullets, saying that you either give us this amount of money for the bullets, or the other choice is that you sign this paper that your son or your daughter was a member of the regime's forces and that was killed by the opposition group, and this way you don't have to pay. Basically forcing the families to side with the Iranian regime, using the body of their beloved children murdered by the Iran regime. They used the IRGC proxy mercenaries that brought from abroad, and then they even diverted people's slogans by the intelligence, IRGC intelligence. We have many reports that suddenly in the middle of the uprising you will see a group of plainclothes people showing up and started to divert. Every time there was a chance of death to Khamenei, they would show up and chant, "Long live the Shah," and so that they can divert the attention from that. And we have several reports directly on the scene that we had received that was the whole goal, was to deviate attention, divert attention, take away the momentum from the main slogan, which was death to Khamenei, death to the dictator. That's exactly what we were focusing on. Our network inside Iran, and the regime was engineering it away from that. But also, they even used machine guns to open fire on the demonstrators. Now, let's take a look at the security apparatus I mentioned earlier. That this is the chart that we put together. That this is the general staff of the armed forces of the regime, which they have since 2009. The IRGC has changed its entire structure, organizational structure. They have become province-based rather than having large divisions and units in Tehran. Instead, they have, each province has its own IRGC headquarters, which is meant to suppress the population. So the IRGC has become, since 2009, the main tool for suppression in all 31 provinces of the country. So you have the 30 IRGC province command, and Tehran is separate. Sarala garrison is in charge of, so that makes it 31. And then you have the IRGC intelligence organization, and then the ground forces. They're all, when it comes to even the regular army and the state security forces, which under regular circumstances are under the command of Interior Ministry, they all come under the command of General Staff of the Armed Forces when protests started. And that's exactly the role they were playing. The MOIS works closely with the IRGC intelligence organization. You saw at that meeting that I showed you, I played the audio, that when the Minister of Intelligence was there, a lot of the commanders of Revolutionary Guards were referred to as also MOIS members. So the connection between the two of them is very fluid, and they work very closely. The intelligence organization of the IRGC and the MOIS, these are the two main intelligence organizations of the regime, both of them in charge of suppressing the population. So that was the case, that the General Staff of the Armed Forces basically was in charge of the suppression of the protests during this period. Now let's talk about what really happened on the ground and the impact of the 2026 uprising. This uprising was very, very unique in terms of intensity, in terms of the extent, how it engulfed all 31 provinces, and the focus that, even though it started with a deteriorating currency value, but it quickly, in a matter of days, became chance of death to Khamenei, and nothing would really deviate them, even though the regime tried to deviate the slogans by throwing in other slogans. But the people didn't follow that. They just maintained the focus, and that's why the regime had to resort to such a high-level massacre. They even, in some areas, there were temporary liberation of some cities, smaller cities, or in Tehran, some areas of Tehran, for instance, Naziabad. For hours, it was totally controlled by the youth. We have direct reports on the ground, area by area in Tehran, that the resistance units of the main Iranian opposition, the MEK, were involved protecting the people, confronting Revolutionary Guards, blocking the roads, pushing back the guards, and getting them engaged in hit and run, getting them preoccupied so they cannot focus on one area, and their forces spread in different parts, giving momentum to the population and hope, and just maintaining that level of confrontation, shattering this aura of the regime that they are invincible. They have these guards, like they show up and they repress everything. They challenge that. So that was very important to note about this particular uprising. It was very evident, as you could see in some of these videos, and many more videos are coming, how the people were ready to fight back. They weren't just every time the guards show up, they wouldn't run away and just disperse. Rather, you had people coming back and fighting back. And then really the organizational pattern emerged during this uprising, how people increasingly were working together on the ground, quickly organizing and determining who does what, and how to build on-the-spot organization in addition to the organization that was already in place. The people had increased their risk acceptance, risking and daring to go to the street even though they knew danger was there. And then they came up with the necessity of self-defense. And again, I want to emphasize the key role that the resistance units of the MEK played. I want to give you a couple of examples of those MEK resistance units commanders on the spot. This one is Naeem Abdullahi. He was 34 years old, a brilliant professor at Tehran University. He had JD in law and also PhD in political science. He was a member of the MEK resistance units. He was very experienced. He was very active during the uprisings in 2017, 2019, and 22 uprisings. He was actually once jailed, and he managed to fight his way out, and he was expelled from the academia because of his involvement. But he continued his work, never stopped. He played a leading role during this uprising in January in Tehran, and he was shot dead by the regime on the 8th of January 2026. This is another member of the MEK resistance units, Zahra Bohlulipur, also known as Raha. She was only 18 years old. She was a first-year linguistics major at Tehran University, a very dedicated member of the MEK network, and she showed tremendous bravery in those nights in Tehran, and eventually she was gunned down on actually 8th of January of this year. Now, let's talk a little bit about what's really ahead of us. Certainly, despite the killing, nothing has been resolved when it comes to the Iranian regime. The socioeconomic situation that led to the uprising is not only there, but it's even worse. Add to it the massacre that increasingly convinces people that there is no other way to end the rule of the clerics except to fight back. And so the resistance is actually battle-tested. They learned a lot. They learned a lot of experience out of this uprising. This regime is a lot weaker. When you resort to such a massacre, you further divide your distance with the people, further pushing more people to oppose the regime, and there's definitely no way to escape it. Now, having said that, let's talk about I'm going to say a few words about the day after, and then I'll get to the Q&A session. Certainly, as the whole world saw, they were all talking about a post-Mullah Iran. The prospect of change has never been so great before the eyes of people, and everyone is thinking what's going to happen afterwards. And of course, the NCRI has clearly prepared a plan for the day after. This plan was made decades ago. It's not that we just thought about it now. The plan is to transfer sovereignty from the ruthless rulers of Iran to the elected representatives of the people in a peaceful way and a lawful way. And so after the overthrow of the regime, there's going to be a provisional government that will be formed by NCRI, whose main job is to set up for free and fair elections that would lead to the formation of a national and constituent assembly, which would draft a new constitution, run the government temporarily, and put the constitution to vote of the people, and then from then on the representatives of the people will take over. Now once that really is formed, that Constituent Assembly is formed, all of the power is transferred to these elected representatives of the people. And and this is something that is not an idea on paper. There are many experts, academics, professionals working on this plan day in, day out. There was just a conference a couple months ago in Paris, top experts who had done a lot of work, study groups on all of the issues from energy to environment to medicine and all of that. They have the plans ready to go. So having said that, let me just conclude by saying that really what the world really needs to do in dealing with the situation in Iran is to raise the cost of repression of the Iranian people by the Iranian regime, hold them accountable legally for all of the crimes that they have done, expel the regime's agents, and recognize the right of the people of Iran to overthrow the regime by resisting and confronting the Revolutionary Guards. So that concludes my original presentation. I'm more than happy to respond to questions you may have. There is a microphone here. Those of you who want to pose a question, please identify yourself and get the microphone, and then we'll go to those who have questions online. Any questions here? Okay, yes, please.
Thank you, Ali. From the films that we've seen, one gets the impression, and I truly can't tell, that the rebels are firing back at the IRGC, which means somehow they've obtained guns. So my question is very simple. Does the revolutionary element have guns, and where did they get them?
Thank you so much. That's John Gizzi from Newsmax. Definitely, as you saw in the video clips, there were many cases, and I didn't show you all of them, but we do have tapes of people fighting back, disarming the Revolutionary Guards. They have learned the tactics of how to confront, even with empty hands, take away the guns from the Revolutionary Guards and fight back. Or people, I mean, you know, in these revolutions, and Iran is not the only example, you look at the whole history, the underdog eventually wins, and that's the case. These people and the resistance units, the younger people in Iran, particularly as you saw, large crowds in different cities, they're convinced that, you know, it's not enough to just get out there and express your dissatisfaction and protest. You need to fight back, you need to confront. And we have had numerous cases of people taking away guns from the IRGC or looking for ways. If there is a desire to obtain guns in Iran, there is a way. Please, yes, use the microphone right here. Kathleen, right here.
Hi, Caitlin Dornbus from New York Post. I saw your action plan for the future, and you know it named a number of increasing sanctions, et cetera, et cetera. We're looking at extended talks this week with the U.S. and Iran and leaders. What message would you say to have the rights of protesters included in any such conversation? Is this something that you would support? Is it something that needs to be considered as we hear the regime talk more and more about focusing the talks only on nuclear?
Well, you know, the world has been negotiating with the Iranian regime for 4 decades. It's not the negotiation itself, it's just like what's the content, what's the goal, what's the ask, and where is the red line. And that's what we're focusing on. And that's why we're emphasizing here is that whatever strategy is pursued by the international community, at the end of the day, you need to see the regime being deprived of the concessions that they were getting before, money, resources, oil, legitimacy. That's the key thing. Second, the elements that give them power, and based on that, for instance, the repressive forces, the IRGC has been, as I showed here, the main force for repressing people inside Iran, but also the main force behind their terrorism, but also the entity that dominates the missile program, their drone program, and the nuclear weapons program. So when we pushed for designating the IRGC since decades ago, and eventually we got it here in the US back in 2017 and then 2018 as an FTO, and now the Europeans who were in the forefront of negotiations have now designated the IRGC as terrorists, that's an important step in the right direction. We need to see those actions, whether it's negotiations, whatever. I think the substance matters for the protesters, number one. Second, at the end of the day, you don't want to just punt the ball. You don't want to just see like the regime weaken a little here, a little bit there. The goal, as far as the people of Iran, and I think the whole world is, the goal is to end the rule of the clerics, to change the regime by the people of Iran. So anything that is focused on that one is an action in the right direction. Of course, as we said earlier, Mrs. Rajiv has emphasized, change will have to come from within by the people of Iran. Please, another question right here. Mike. Right here.
Thank you very much. Fueled by the free and yummy coffee that you provided, I would like to ask 3 questions if I could. First, as a kind of a historical matter, we have seen this uprising and the response by the regime described, even by the French foreign minister, as the most repressive and violent demonstration by the regime since its founding. Yet, we heard earlier here today, and it's a standard part of NCRI's history, that the group, or MEK, endured an episode in 1988 in which 30,000 people were killed. So how do you square that? How could this be the most repressive and violent demonstration by the regime if we have that precedent?
So what's the question exactly?
So this can't be the worst we've ever seen from the regime if they killed 30,000 people in 1988.
Okay. All right.
So it's just a kind of, is it proper to describe it that way as the worst?
Yes.
Number one.
Right. But so I respond to the number one question. That's James Rosen of Newsmax TV. Certainly, it is the most repressive measure the regime has done since they came to power. And the difference between this one and the 1988 massacre, even though the number and the brutality was higher at the time, but it was focused on the Iranian prisons. It was focused on a certain group. These were people who want to change. A vast majority of them were associated with the Mujahideen Khalq, the MEK. It was based on a fatwa issued by the then Supreme Leader Khomeini, saying anyone who is in any way associated with the MEK must be killed. It doesn't matter what they did or they didn't. It was a genocide, clearly. Now, what happened now in the streets of Tehran and all the, nearly 400 cities across the country, it was open fire, shooting at the protesters on daylight in the streets, indiscriminately. Anyone who is just coming out to protest, they target them. That has never happened in such a scale. Yes, we did have, the time of the Shah, we had the, what they called the Black September, in September 8, 1978. The Shah in Jale Square opened fire on the protesters. But that was one area in Tehran that so many people got killed that was one of the elements that eventually broke the camel's back and brought the Shah down. even though they, a lot of people were killed, hundreds definitely were killed at the time. But now we're talking about multiplying that by, a bigger number and everywhere. And that's why I think it's so important to, yes, describe it the biggest massacre the regime has done against the public, not a certain targeted group of people.
Second question, does NCRI-US advocate for President Trump to launch a fresh round of strikes against Iran in response to the events of the last month?
Well, let me also emphasize that our goal, and I think it should be everybody's goal, is to end the rule of the clerics, period. It's not about weakening them. It's not about responding to something. It's about ending the rule of the clerics. Now, when we talk about and focus on regime change in Iran, that has to come by the people of Iran. There's no way a country as large and as populated as Iran could be, follow like the Iraq example or other countries most recently have had. This is a country of 93 million population with tremendous history and a repressive regime like the mullahs in Iran. That's why change has to come from within. And the focus has to be, if the goal is to help change the regime, which is our goal, the goal has to be empowering those on the ground. The best thing that the world can do is to, as we said, hold the regime accountable and recognize the right of the people to confront the revolutionary guards. This is a just resistance, not using violence. This is the right of the people to confront the revolutionary guards. And I think we're urging every world leaders, every official anywhere in the world to come out and overtly, clearly, without any doubt, declare this, that they do recognize the right of the people to overthrow the regime.
You leave us with the safe inference. I don't know if this is on, but you leave us with the safe inference that the NCRI-US does not support or does not advocate for such strikes, because presumably if you did, you would have told us so. Final question, and you've been very generous. Play devil's advocate with you a little bit. You point to all the unique aspects of this latest uprising, its geographic spread, the horrors associated with it, and other features of it. And you point to all that as evidence that the resistance movement is in fact growing, and therefore that the ultimate fall of the regime as a result of the people's expression and not some decisions made elsewhere is imminent, or if not imminent, inevitable. And while it's certainly correct that this uprising exhibits different features than previous ones, it also carries a similarity with all the other previous uprisings, and that is that it was ended brutally by the regime with force. And so the question I have for you is why you would imagine that the people who are risking their lives out in the streets of Iran throughout the 31 provinces are taking from this latest episode the lesson that they're getting stronger, when in fact it seems, or it could safely be said, that every time they do this, no matter what they do, it ends the same way.
Thank you so much for your question. I just want to add another point to the previous question, that as we have said, there is really no need for foreign intervention in Iran, because the people of Iran are capable and bring about change there. But the outside, and the reason I say that is important because so far in the past 3-4 decades, we have seen a very negative role when it comes to international community. The policy of the West has consistently, with few exceptions, have been policy of appeasement, whether it was the United States or Europe, reaching out to the mullahs and giving them concessions. I remember very well when we first exposed the nuclear site in Natanz in Iraq in August 14, 2002, right here in Washington. The world didn't know anything about it. We triggered the IAEA inspections of Iranian nuclear sites. In a matter of 3 months, we came up with 3 other major press conferences that showed other aspects of the regime. And that was an opportunity for the world to end that program right then and there and prevent it from expanding and getting bigger and bigger. To the contrary, what we saw was a rush by the Europeans, the EU3 at the time, to reach out to Tehran, give them concessions, and and instead of welcoming our work, we got designated ourselves. They shut down our office and praised the Ayatollahs and gave them the opportunity to expand. That's a very harmful policy, both for the Western nations, but also for the people of Iran. We know how destructive that is because we have been badly harmed by that policy. And of course, that policy allowed the terrorism of the Iran regime to flourish. Terrorism became the most profitable tool in the hands of the Ayatollahs. And put yourself in the shoes of the Ayatollahs. If you take a hostage and you get, billions of dollars for it, only to be able to release them and then take a couple more, why would the regime abandon their terrorism if it's giving them the money and resources and the legitimacy and creating fear and all of that? That has been the dominant policy over the years. That policy, what we're saying, needs to shift, and we see a lot of signs that that's shifting, primarily because the circumstances on the ground have shifted. This is a society that the regime is, as the world has seen the weakness of the regime, not supposedly their power and their authority. The world has seen that the mullahs are not 10 feet tall. They lost much of their clout in the region, the Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and they lost their biggest ally, Assad, in Syria. So this is a whole new situation. And in that respect, certainly a policy has to change and focus on the elements for change, which is the Iranian people. Now, in terms of similarities, certainly, all of these protests, at the end of the day, you saw people killed by the regime. The hope of the regime, as far as the regime is concerned, was that, okay, to finish it off right there, this would be an end to another round of the protests. And we have seen that not only that didn't happen, but the regime paid a tremendous amount of resources and attention to prevent the resurgence of such a thing, because they know every time it comes out, it's not the same. It's not a cycle that is repeating itself. It gets deeper and deeper and deeper. This time the protest was entirely focused on the regime itself. You didn't hear any other slogans, any other demands. People didn't ask for anything else except one thing: overthrowing the mullahs. It's not like 2022 that the whole issue about the rights of women became central, which is important. But that's not enough to change the regime. This time, you saw people convinced that you need to take things into your hands. Those video clips you saw, the youth confronting, a lot of them very young, and even we had many cases that mothers got involved with their children in the street. So people have gotten to a point that they have nothing else to lose when it comes to their life and their behavior, but also to their political freedoms. I was just speaking last night to a friend here in the United States, and he was just telling me that he had called his sister in Iran, in Tehran. His sister is maybe in his 50s, 60s, I think. The sister tells him that I went to the protest every single day in Tehran, and he was telling him that, this is dangerous, be careful. And she said, why should I be careful? I didn't get anything out of my life, all of my life. You didn't know how we lived, and there's nothing for our future. At least I'm going to the streets so my children will have a better future. And I asked him, was your mother a political activist or anything like that? And he said, no. This is the mood of the population. People are increasingly getting to the conclusion that they need to act, they need to pay the price. And that's why this is a fertile ground, as you correctly concluded. that the resistance units of the MEK are gaining momentum. It's not just them operating. This is a very favorable environment for that strategy of regime change. And all you need to do is just have a small group of resistance units to get involved, and the people support you, and suddenly you find on the ground a large group of people who are your allies, your people, and you can work with them, expand your network. Many of the members of resistance units that you saw in the video were arrested, killed, or went missing. But the network is now stronger than it was before the uprising started. And it has a lot to do with what's really happening on the ground, and what the Iranian people are looking for change. Please, yes. There's a question.
From South Asia. I'm a South Asian Muslim. My question is, you say the protests are getting stronger and broader, but is there massive? Are these protests in pockets, or is it massive, sufficient to sustain the protests?
Thank you so much. That's a good question you raised, because when we talk about massive, at the time of the Shah, for instance, it was primarily just the massive protests by the people in very large numbers that basically swept the Shah out of power. These mullahs are not going to allow that. They have the experience of the Shah, and so what you need, that's why, out of necessity on the ground, the role of the resistance units on the ground in combination with the protests is absolutely crucial. And that's why that mix is a deadly mix for the mullahs and a liberating mix for the people of Iran. So you have the combination of the discontent of the population, but also people on the ground who can push back the Revolutionary Guards, who can confront them, who can provide the protection and courage, expand them, and ensure the continuity, keep the message focused on the slogans where you want to go. The main task, with no exception, for the MEK resistance units on the ground was to keep the focus on the two slogans: death to Khamenei, death to the dictator, which is the same thing. So basically, that's the winning strategy, and we saw during this uprising that strategy worked. It was effective, and more people have come to that same conclusion as a result of this massacre. This was not a massacre that demoralized people and pacified them, which is what's the purpose of the killing. To the contrary, it has further convinced the population that there's only one way for change, and that's continue this path and be ready to take the further steps. Any other questions? Yes. And then we're going to go to online questions once we're done here.
Hi, my name is Zineb. I'm with the Morocco World News, and my question to you is, what impact would a reduction in Iranian regime influence have on the stability of the neighboring countries like Iraq, Yemen, and Lebanon?
Well, certainly the Iranian regime has had the most destructive, destabilizing role in the whole region since they actually came to power. In the early days after the Iranian Revolution, the mullahs called for what they call export of revolution. They called for destabilization of all the countries in the region. The whole Iran-Iraq war, continuation of it was for what they said, liberating Jerusalem via Karbala. That strategy was in place. But that has been badly shattered. And the weaker the regime gets, I think the more stable the countries in the region get. But of course, unless you eliminate the head of the snake of war and terror in the region, which is Tehran, that destructive role remains, even though it's diminished. So that's why I think it's to the interest of all the countries in the region to see change in Iran, and they will see what an impact, positive impact, it would have on all countries in the region, if not the world. Please, John Gizi right here, one more.
Thank you. Ali, one thing I have to say, taking your statement there about it would be in the interest of all countries in the region? Would it be in the interests of Qatar and Saudi Arabia as well?
Absolutely. There's no exception. These mullahs have, when Khomeini died in his will, he targeted specifically Saudi Arabia, didn't recognize it with that. They call it the land of Hijaz. Basically having, we shouldn't forget how the regime was trying to take advantage of the Hajj yearly event. And they went with explosive and guns and weapons back in 80s, trying to destabilize there. So there's a history of hostility between the regime and, for instance, Saudi Arabia. They fired missiles at Aramco oil facility in 2019 that overnight reduced the oil export of that country, threatening other nations in the region. So obviously it's to the interest of all of those nations you mentioned and others to see a free, democratic, non-nuclear, non-belligerent Iran that is at peace with its neighbors. One of the points specified in the 10-point platform of the NCRI is their policies in the region, supporting peace in the Middle East, disbanding the IRGC, which is the main tool for all of these trouble they're doing, keeping the focus on inside Iran, building the nation, and abandoning any, intervention in internal affairs of other countries. So that would be a huge benefit for all the countries in the region. Okay, now we're going to go to, I guess, online questions, please.
Yes. There is a three-part question, rather long one, and then there is another short one from John Sepen. He's asking, you talked about geographical distribution of this round of protests. How about the demographics? It seems that a lot more sectors of society were involved in this one in comparison to 2022 and 2019 protests.
Okay, I answered this question. Certainly, both in terms of geography and demographic, definitely. We had various nationalities in Iran involved in it. For instance, Lordegan in Charmahal Bakhtiari was one of the cities that actually was liberated for a short period of time. Major clashes broke out between the people and the Revolutionary Guards. We had, up north, northeast in Azerbaijan province, everywhere in the society. The minorities, the nationalities of Iran have been badly repressed by the Iranian regime. Now, as the same way they were repressed under the Shah, both Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and his father, Reza Shah, Lorestan was bad. They were just, it was cleansing by them and dispersing them, displacing them. The same thing happened to the Azeris when Reza Shah, but also Mohammad Reza Shah, both of them suppressed them badly. The Kurds, the Arabs, the Baluchis. So all of them have an interest to see an Iran that would be free, would be democratic, would be devoid of the any elements of the Shah's dictatorship or the current theocracy. And it was evident, as you saw, geography and demography as sort of like overlaps.
Next question is from John Bowden from The Independent. It's a three-part question. Do you want all three at the same time, or should I ask one by one?
Why don't you say all three if it's short, and then I'll see I can respond to all of them.
So first question, what was the effect on the ground in Iran of U.S. lawmakers suggesting military support for protesters, arming them directly? Did it affect credibility of the movement? Question number two, what are your thoughts on IRGC and Iranian government using Pahlavi's connections to Israel to accuse Mossad of backing protests? What were the effects inside Iran of Pahlavi tying himself to the protests? Question number 3, U.S. forces are still positioned in the region. Is there a consensus as to which figures in Iran would need to be taken out to really destabilize the government?
Okay, let me just do, I guess I have to do one by one. First, regarding the lawmakers suggesting that the people of Iran should be armed, I think hidden in that suggestion is actually the fact that they are recognizing that the people of Iran have the right to use arms against the regime. Where in the world the mullahs have gotten the right to use weapons bought by the money and resources of the Iranian people and used against the Iranian people and killing them? So that's one thing. Second, in reality, the people are already doing it. I mean, you saw the people are already disarming the Revolutionary Guards, are already confronting them. They're already looking and finding ways to confront the Revolutionary Guards. So it's great to see that kind of a suggestion, but that's something that's already happening in Iran. And it's not the issue of credibility. People have already come to that conclusion. Now, second, you asked about how the Reza Pahlavi is impact or ties to what's happening on the ground. All I can say is that the only way Reza Pahlavi finds a connection to Iran as a whole is his father, which was a deposed dictator, overthrown by a nationwide revolution. Millions of people swept the Shah of power. This is a nation that has that experience. Even before that, they saw how the nationalist government of Dr. Massacre, which nationalized oil and was serving the interests of the people and believed in democracy, was overthrown. And people just pushed back and eventually overthrew the Shah. So that's the history behind that. So when you have him trying to inject himself to a situation which he really has no role whatsoever, interestingly, in this uprising, for days, people were already in the streets while he was on vacation, and then suddenly he just comes up and says, you know, I want the people to show up, you know, the next day or the day after. Well, this is like just ordering the sun to rise tomorrow morning. You know, what does that mean? People were already there. However, he does have a negative and destructive role, because his presence would identify the protest, which is genuine, as you saw all over the country, with the past dictatorship of the Shah, because that's the only way he's relevant. And he has never distanced himself from the dictatorship of the Shah. To the contrary, every time he was asked that question, what's your opinion about the Shah's dictatorship, the human rights violations, the corruption, all of that, he says, I'm not going to answer that question, clearly meaning that he endorses it. Even the Shah himself, in the last weeks before he fell, he saw the revolution, he appeared on national television. I was watching that TV, and he was broken, and he said, I concede all the mistakes and all of that, and I heard the voice of the revolution. I promised not to repeat those mistakes, and I will do justice and all of that. That was too little, too late. Even he doesn't even accept that. So that's why, you know, this movement is about democracy, and he represents a dictatorship. And look at his, the plan for the transition that he introduced, which is a combination of the Shah's dictatorship and the current theocracy. Unbelievable concentration of power in a single person who is already unelected. So is that the goal of the people, to replace the dictatorship with another one, which could be even worse under the circumstances? So, and I know he makes a lot of noise, but keep in mind that the revolution in a country like Iran, 93 million population, is not going to take place by doing some interviews or showing up in this or that channel by a single person. You need the force on the ground, which, by the way, the only force he refers to on the ground that he says I have connection, I work with, is the IRGC itself. And it's absolutely unbelievable how you can think about change in Iran by relying on the Revolutionary Guards or elements within the Revolutionary Guards. Whereas change, as we saw, comes from the people and from those who are fighting and confronting the Revolutionary Guard. So certainly that, any association with him is destructive. It hurts the uprising, but it also undermines the goal of the democracy. And then the third question, I forgot what it was. I think it was something about the U.S. forces there in terms of targets and all of that. Well, I'm not, in the position to give any advice to anybody, especially on the military issue there. They have their own plans and everything. But one thing I know that over the years, we have suffered a lot as a result of policy of appeasement of the regime, tolerating the proxy operations of the Iranian regime there. So that policy has to change. And I want to reemphasize again, no matter who does what, at the end of the day, there's only one way for change, and that's by the people of Iran on the ground, and those who have forces on the ground to fight the IRGC.
One more question from...
Is that the last one?
Yes, I guess so.
Right.
I hope so. This is from Josh Klein from the Breitbart News, who was watching the briefing online live, and it ties to what you just said about appeasement in some ways. He says, the U.S. has embarked on negotiations with the regime. Where do you think this will lead? Will this strategically change the situation, or will be more of the same? What specific policy would you suggest?
Thank you, Josh, for asking the question. Certainly, we have seen the Iran regime at negotiating table over and over for over 3 decades. And the experience of the past has shown that the regime basically uses them as buying time, gaining concessions, and just continuing on its own path as before. Now, is this current negotiation going to change anything strategically? I don't think so, because the strategy in dealing with the regime is dictated by the mullahs themselves. And we have seen them in action in the past month on the ground. They have continued their repressive policies. They have continued their rhetoric regionally. They have continued focusing on their nuclear weapons program, their missile program, their drone program. So they're not going to change their policy unless really they get to a point that they feel they're just on the verge of collapse, which would be too late. Actually, we would welcome if the regime would back down on all of those claims and all of the demands the international community has from them. If they accept it, we say great. If the regime abandons is suppressing its own people, developing nuclear weapons, their proxy groups, their terrorism, that would be because the regime relies on those to survive. If they abandon it, that would actually speed up the process of change. So we have always said that, go ahead. Anyone who wants to negotiate with the Ayatollahs, perfect, go ahead. These are the demands. These are the things specify. Keep the focus on that one. And we tell the regime, go ahead and negotiate and comply. And that will make things easier for us. The experience in the past has shown that they're not going to go that route. But if anyone wants to give it another try, we tell them welcome. Okay? Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thank you for coming. And we're here. If there's any further questions later, we can talk. And I want to make sure that you have the media here, the package.